Hi friends. Please subscribe and help me get my first 1,000 subscribers. It's one click for you, but for me it's a huge encouragement and motivation. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. I hope you enjoy this story. Let us go. The coffee shop was intimate, bathed in soft, amber light, with holiday string lights already twinkling in the windows against the gray Seattle afternoon. The air inside was thick with the rich aroma of roasted beans, cinnamon, and fresh pastries. Laura sat hunched over her cappuccino, absent-mindedly swirling the foam with her spoon. Her gaze was focused on the cup, but there was a vibrating anxiety behind her eyes. Across from her sat Olivia, vibrant, confident, wearing that specific expression of someone who believes they've figured out the secret to life while everyone else is still guessing. She leaned back in her chair, took a slow sip of her Pinot Grigio, and smirked. "Laura, you living in a box," she said, tilting her head to the side. "Everything is scripted, the job, the house, the husband. You the textbook good wife, nobody's debating that. But where exactly are you in that equation?" Laura looked up, her defense mechanism kicking in. "James takes good care of me. We've been together a long time, and I am happy," she said, though her voice was quiet, lacking conviction. Olivia laughed. It was a bright, jarring sound, too loud for the cozy atmosphere of the cafe. A few patrons looked over from their laptops. Olivia did not care. "Happy?" She rolled the word around her mouth like she was tasting bad wine. "Laura, happiness is feeling free. It's when you can do what you want, not what you think is appropriate or correct." Laura shifted uncomfortably. Images of her typical evenings at home flashed through her mind. Dinner prep, discussions about the mortgage or weekend plans, falling asleep in front of Netflix. It was calm, it was stable, but under Olivia's scrutiny, it suddenly felt beige and suffocatingly predictable. "I do not feel unhappy," Laura said, her voice rising slightly, as if she were trying to convince herself. Olivia leaned in closer across the small table, her gaze piercing. "Think about it. When was the last time you did something strictly for yourself? Not for James, not for the household. Just for you." Laura opened her mouth to answer, but the words died in her throat. She could not remember. Olivia noticed the hesitation and pounced on it immediately. "See? That's exactly my point. I stopped lying to myself years ago. My husband and I made a deal. We both have our freedom. We love each other, we have the house, the kids. But we do not keep each other on a leash. I can go wherever I want, meet whoever I want. He can do the same. And you know what? For the first time in years, we stopped fighting." Laura frowned, wrapping her hands around the warm mug as if anchoring herself. "Are you saying, you have an open marriage? Why not?" Olivia's voice held zero doubt. "It's honest. It's freedom. Nobody is deceiving anyone." The words honest and freedom hit Laura like a draft of cold air. She tried to brush the concept aside, but something deep inside her shifted. "But the jealousy?" she asked, pressing the point, almost pleading for a reason to reject it. "You really okay with him being with someone else?" Olivia chuckled softly. "Jealousy is a weakness, honey. It's a symptom of insecurity. And I am secure. I know he'll always come back to me. And I'll go back to him. It works." Laura fell silent. She saw a fanatical glint in her friend's eyes, a kind of terrifying confidence that was simultaneously scary and magnetic. Outside the window, a couple walked by in the drizzle, a man and a woman, huddled under one umbrella, laughing at some private joke. Laura involuntarily compared them to her reality. She and James had not shared a laugh that effortless in a long time. There was too much talk about bills, renovations, and work deadlines. Olivia's words were cutting deeper now. "Do you think that would work for everyone?" Laura asked, feigning a neutral tone. "No," Olivia's smile widened. "But for you? It would work. You're a smart, beautiful woman. You deserve more. Give yourself 10 days. Go somewhere alone. Disconnect from everything. Take off the ring, be free. You'll come back renewed, and your marriage will only be better for it. Take off the ring." The phrase felt like a physical blow. Laura looked down at her hand, at the thin gold band she had not taken off for a single day since the wedding. The thought of leaving it on the nightstand seemed wild, almost taboo. But that terror made the idea strangely intoxicating. The wild thought suddenly seemed possible. "I do not know," she murmured. Olivia covered Laura's hand with her own. "Just think about it. You lose nothing. 10 days is not betrayal, Laura. It's an opportunity." Laura's stomach knotted. She pulled her hand away, but she did it slowly, hesitantly. Outside, a gust of wind tore a few wet leaves from the trees and plastered them against the glass. Laura watched them, and a feeling rose in her chest, one she was too afraid to name. Olivia smiled, looking like she already knew the seed had been planted. The kitchen was filled with the savory scent of pan-seared steak and fresh rosemary. Candles flickered on the table, not for an anniversary, just because James liked to make things cozy when they actually had dinner together. Outside the window, the Pacific Northwest twilight had settled in, the glass reflecting their small world, 2 people at a table, a routine dinner, domestic tranquility. James placed a plate in front of Laura and sat opposite her. He smiled the way only he could, calm, warm, a look that usually made her feel shielded from the rest of the world. "All right," he said, pouring a glass of Cabernet for her. "Tell me everything. How was your day? You seem a little lost in thought tonight." Laura ran her finger along the stem of the wine glass. Olivia's words were spinning in her head, creating a pressure behind her temples. But bringing it up directly felt impossible. "I was thinking," she began slowly, testing the weight of each word. "I think I need to go on a vacation." James lit up immediately. His eyes brightened. "Now you re-talking," he laughed, sliding the glass closer to her. "That is a fantastic idea. We've been talking about this forever. Ocean, sun, new scenery. Maybe Napa? Or down to San Diego. Imagine, just the 2 of us, 0 responsibilities." He spoke with such genuine joy that Laura felt her chest tighten. The corners of his mouth were turned up, his eyes sparkling. He was already building an itinerary in his head, picturing her right there beside him, and that was the most painful part. "No, James," she interrupted quietly. He paused, eyebrows raised in confusion. "No what?" Laura took a sip of wine to mask the tremor in her voice. She set the glass down and looked him dead in the eye. "You misunderstood. I was talking about a vacation. But for me. Just for myself." James did not process it immediately. For a second, he just sat there, the smile slowly dissolving from his face. "I'm sorry. Come again?" "I want to go alone," Laura said, her voice steady even though she was shaking inside. "For 10 days. I just need to be with myself." The silence dropped like a guillotine. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder. "Alone," he repeated slowly. "Are you kidding?" Laura looked away. "No. I am exhausted. I need space. To think. To decommission from everything." James leaned forward slightly, his face changing. A steely glint appeared in his eyes. "From everything." His voice dropped an octave. "Does that mean from me too?" Laura swallowed hard, her fingers shredding a paper napkin. "I need time. For myself." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. He exhaled, but there was no humor in the sound. "You know, I was waiting for you to say, 'Let us go together. Let us pick a spot.' And instead, you sitting there telling me you want to take off by yourself." "Laura, do you even hear how that sounds?" She snapped her head up, a note of desperation cutting through her voice. "I am not asking you to understand. I am asking you to accept it. It's just 10 days. 10 days where I am here and you God knows where." James slammed his wine glass down on the table, red liquid sloshed onto the tablecloth. "And what, I am supposed to just sit here and wait while you find yourself?" "I am not cheating on you," she blurted out. "It is not about that." "Then what is it about, Laura?" He stood up, looming over the table. "You want to walk away from our life. From us." She stood up too, defensive. "I want a pause. Do you get that? I need to breathe. I want to go somewhere where I do not have obligations. Where I can just be me." His face turned to stone. "And you not be yourself with me?" The question caught her off guard. Laura felt something inside her crumble. She wanted to say, I can, but her tongue would not move. Olivia's voice was too loud in her head. You deserve more. 10 days of freedom changes everything. James looked at her, his eyes darkening. I do not recognize you, he said hoarsely. This is not the woman I married. Laura pressed her palms to her chest, as if trying to keep her heart from pounding out of her ribcage. I'll come back, she whispered. I promise. He slowly shook his head. That is not the point, his voice wavered, but remained firm. The question is not whether you'll come back. It's what exactly you'll be coming back to. Silence sliced through the kitchen again. Outside, the rain had picked up, drumming against the glass as if nature was crying along with them. The candles had burned down almost to the nub, and the wine stain on the tablecloth was spreading like a dark bruise. Laura sank back into her chair. Her eyes wandered around the room, but everything looked foreign. Their cozy home, the dinner, the candles, it had all lost its warmth. James stood by the window, turned away from her. His silhouette in the reflection looked like it was carved from granite. Think about it, he said, quiet but harsh. Think very hard, Laura. Because you see not unsay words like this. She closed her eyes. The tears burned, but she refused to let them fall. Deep down she knew, the decision had already been made. The house had turned into a battlefield. For several days running, their evenings followed the same brutal script, stony silence over takeout boxes, followed by words that erupted like geysers, sometimes shouted, sometimes whispered, but always designed to maim. James sat on the edge of the California King mattress, elbows digging into his knees, head hanging low. Laura stood by the bedroom window, her back to him, staring out at the relentless Seattle drizzle blurring the streetlights. You're going to torch everything, he said, his voice raspy, barely lifting his head. Everything we've built. The equity, the trust, the life. No, she replied, and there was a steeliness in her tone that had not been there a week ago. It's a chance. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. A chance? For what? For who? For you? What about us? What about this family? Laura stayed silent. Outside, the rain hammered against the gutters, a rhythmic, hollow sound. James looked at her silhouette, thin, rigid, as if she had already mentally checked out of this zip code. Laura, he stood up, crossing the room to stand behind her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Please. Do not do this. Do not cross this line. She flinched, a microscopic movement, but she did not pull away. I have to, she whispered. I feel like if I stay here right now, I am going to suffocate. James closed his eyes. A cocktail of rage and despair was boiling in his chest. He gripped her shoulder tighter. These are not your words, he hissed. This is Olivia talking. She's poisoning you. Laura spun around, ripping herself from his grip. Stop it. This is my decision. Her eyes were flashing, not with tears, but with a stubborn defiance. James took a step back. He realized the logic center of her brain had shut down, arguing was useless. But he was not ready to wave the white flag yet. The next day, Laura met Olivia again. It was the same coffee shop in Capitol Hill, and even the barista gave a knowing nod as they walked in. Olivia was nursing a glass of Chardonnay this time, looking like she owned the place, already anticipating the update. He's against it, Laura said, sliding into the booth. Her voice was heavy with the exhaustion of emotional combat. He thinks I am going to destroy the family. Olivia smirked, swirling her wine. Of course he's against it. Men are terrified of losing control. They re-used to the wife being a fixture, like a lamp, always there, always predictable. But you are not property, Laura. You a woman. You have a right to your own autonomy. Laura ran a hand through her hair and sighed. He said there might not be a way back. Olivia leaned forward across the reclaimed wood table. Her voice softened, but the message was a scalpel. Do you want a way back? Or do you want a way forward? Think about it. This is your life. If you back down now, you're going to spend the rest of your years resenting him, wondering what if. Laura fell silent. Fear and curiosity were wrestling in her chest. 10 days, Olivia reminded her. Just 10 days. It's not a divorce filing. It's a new experience. James will get over it. He literally has no choice. There was a finality in those words. Laura felt her resolve harden like concrete. The nights with James continued to be a war of attrition. He spoke quietly, sometimes snapping, but always with a current of desperation. You replaying with fire, Laura. You think you can just waltz back in here and everything resets to factory settings? No. That is not how the real world works. You being dramatic, Laura shot back. It's just a vacation. No, his voice cracked. It's a fracture. And once the foundation cracks, the whole house comes down. She turned away, hiding her eyes. Guilt was gnawing at her, but it was overpowered by a stubborn, almost childish desire to prove she was independent. James could see he was losing her. Her gaze was getting colder, her answers shorter. It was like Olivia was pulling her strings from across town. I am begging you, he said one night, sitting next to her on the bed. Stop this. You are my wife. We have a home. We have us. Why do you need this? Laura sat motionless, staring at a spot on the wall. Because I want to know who I am without all of this, she said dully. James closed his eyes. He had nothing left in the tank. He realized his words were just bouncing off a brick wall. He exhaled, a heavy, bitter sound. If you want to go, go. The words hung in the silence like a verdict. Laura slowly turned to him. There was a flicker of victory in her eyes, but it was shadowed by something darker. James turned away, lying on his back and staring at the ceiling. He felt hollowed out. And for the first time in years, the temperature in their bedroom felt like it had dropped below freezing. The suitcase stood by the front door. It was brand new, a glossy cherry-red hardshell, bought specifically to signal that this trip was different. Laura was buzzing around the house, packing the last essentials, bikinis, sundresses, the new strappy heels she ordered online. Her eyes were lit up with an adrenaline rush, a spark James had not seen directed at him in a very long time. He stood by the living room window, leaning against the wall. He watched her frantic energy in silence. His face was a mask, his eyes cold. You got everything? He asked dryly. I think so, Laura threw a quick glance at him. Probably packed too much. She tried to make a joke of it, but his expression remained flat. No worms. When the Uber pulled into the driveway, James helped her carry the red suitcase out. He loaded it into the trunk of the Prius and stepped back onto the curb. Laura turned to him, half expecting a hug, or at least a goodbye kiss. But he just nodded. Have a nice trip, he said, his voice void of emotion. The words sounded like a dismissal. Laura flinched, but quickly composed herself. Thanks, she replied quietly, and climbed into the back seat. The car pulled away. She watched through the window as their craftsman bungalow shrank in the distance, feeling a sudden surge of lightness. Not fear, not guilt, just pure, unadulterated weightlessness. It was like shedding a heavy winter coat she'd been wearing for years. The resort in Cabo San Lucas hit her with a wall of noise, blinding sunshine, and the salty scent of the Pacific. People were laughing by the infinity pool, a DJ was spinning tracks, and servers were circulating with endless trays of margaritas. On her very first night, Laura found herself swept up by a crowd, dancing until her feet hurt, trading names she would not remember, feeling the weight of male gazes. She laughed louder than she ever had in Seattle. The first man was a businessman from Texas, down for a golf trip. The second was a young bartender with a reckless grin and a silver tongue. The third. Laura lost count by day 4. Every evening was a new production. Every morning started with a hangover and Advil, but her chest swelled with that intoxicating feeling, freedom. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, sun-kissed, glowing, hair wild and salty. There was something new in her eyes, a casual defiance. There she is, Laura thought, smiling at her reflection. The real me. Sometimes, when the bass dropped and the noise faded for a second, a thought of James would flicker in her mind. She imagined him waiting at home, brooding, but ultimately still loving her. He had let her go, had not he? That meant he consented. That meant he would forgive. That meant he would accept. I'll go back and be an even better wife, she whispered to herself before passing out in a king-sized bed that was never empty. I'll get this out of my system, recharge, and I'll be his again. On the 5th day, Laura fell in with a group of tourists from Canada. They threw a massive beach party with a bonfire, acoustic guitars, and dancing in the sand. Tequila flowed like water, laughter echoed against the crashing waves. She sat by the fire, a plastic cup in hand, feeling like she had stepped into a completely different timeline, 1 light-years away from the quiet house, the rainy commute, and James. "You re-amazing," one of the men told her. He was tall, with a raspy voice. "You literally glow." Laura laughed, letting him pull her close, kissing lips that tasted of lime and salt. She loved being wanted. She loved that her life suddenly felt like an endless loop of pleasure. And somewhere deep down, buried under the booze and the adrenaline, a thought whispered, "It's just 10 days. I have a husband. I have a home. This is just a little secret between me and the universe." Toward the end of the trip, Laura stopped counting the days. It felt like this bubble of freedom would last forever. But as the return flight loomed closer, she started telling herself a mantra: "I was just having fun. James knows this is temporary. He let me go. So everything will be exactly how I left it." She believed it with a naive, almost childlike certainty. She spent her last night at the hotel bar, grinding on the dance floor with another stranger. She smiled, laughed, acting like this was the best vacation of her life. Her internal monologue was comforting. "Tomorrow, I go home. Tomorrow, I see James. Tomorrow, I am Laura again." She had absolutely no idea what was waiting for her on the other side of that flight. The tires of the Boeing 737 kissed the wet runway at SeaTac, and Laura smiled for the first time in hours. A sensation of lightness fluttered in her chest, as if those 10 days of freedom had actually gifted her a new pair of wings. She walked through the terminal, rolling her red suitcase, her mind entirely focused on home. The scene was already playing out in 4K in her imagination, James standing in the doorway, stern perhaps, but ultimately pulling her into a hug. She would apologize, promise fidelity, and they would hit the reset button. The Uber navigated the gray ribbons of I-5, bringing her back to their neighborhood. The street looked exactly the same as she had left it: manicured lawns, SUVs parked in driveways, neighbors walking their golden doodles in the drizzle. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammering against her ribs. There it was. Their craftsman bungalow. Familiar. Safe. But as the car slowed, something felt off. The blinds were drawn tight, sealing the house like a tomb. The yard was eerily quiet. Even the mailbox hung open, empty, no junk mail, no flyers, nothing. Laura stepped out of the car, her suitcase wheels clattering loudly on the wet pavement. She climbed the porch steps and slid her key into the lock. The bolt turned too easily, smooth and oiled, as if it had been recently serviced. The door swung open, and a draft of cold, stale air hit her face. Inside, there was nothing. The kitchen held no scent of coffee or dinner. The living room was missing the sofa, the rug, the TV. The walls were naked, marked only by the pale outlines where their framed photos had hung for years. A thin layer of dust had already begun to settle on the hardwood floors. "James." Her voice trembled, bouncing off the bare walls. She took a hesitant step inside. "I am home." Silence. She walked down the hallway to the master bedroom. Where the California king bed used to be, there was now a gaping rectangular void. No pillows, no sheets, not even the nightstands. Just the indentations in the carpet where the heavy furniture had rested. Her heart was beating so loud it echoed in her ears. "James," she repeated, louder this time, bordering on a scream. No answer. Laura bolted into his home office. The shelves were stripped bare. The desk, the iMac, the stacks of paper gone. Even the lingering scent of his cologne had been scrubbed from the air. Everything had vanished, as if he had never existed in this space. She slid down the wall, sitting right on the floor, pressing her palms against her cheeks. The air was dry and frigid. He must have turned off the thermostat days ago. Panic began to rise in her throat like bile. "No," she whispered. "This CA not be real." Then, her eyes caught something on the small built-in shelf in the entryway. A single folder. White, crisp, official-looking. She crawled toward it, her hands shaking so badly she could barely lift the cover. The first page was a standard real estate form, closing disclosure. Her house. Their house. Sold. Laura clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. The papers rustled in her grip, the legal jargon blurring through her tears. Tucked inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, written in blue ink. You wanted freedom. I gave it to you. We are no longer bound by anything. James. Her hand trembled, the paper slipping through her fingers. She read it again, praying she had hallucinated the words. But the handwriting was as cold and sharp as the empty rooms surrounding her. She wandered through the house like a ghost, opening closets, empty. Checking the bathroom, bare shelves, even the vanity mirror had been unscrewed from the wall. In the kitchen, there was not a single spoon or mug left. Everything that proved she had a life here had disappeared along with James. Only the silence remained. She fell to her knees in the middle of the empty living room. The hardwood floor, the same one they had refinished together, now felt alien and freezing against her skin. Flashbacks bombarded her, their dinners, the laughter, his arms around her on Sunday mornings. And then, instantly overlapping those memories, her laughing with strangers in Cabo, the margaritas, the bonfires on the beach. It all twisted together into a sickening knot. I came back, she whispered, her voice cracking. I came back. But there was no home to come back to. Outside, the Seattle rain began to fall in earnest. Drops drummed against the roof, the sound amplifying in the hollow shell of the house. Laura walked out onto the porch and sat on the steps. Her bright red suitcase stood next to her, looking ridiculous and garish against the gray afternoon. She stared at the street, but the road was empty. A neighbor walked by across the street, nodding politely but quickly looking away. Laura saw the curiosity in their eyes. She felt exposed, a woman who had been surgically removed from her own life. And only then did the reality truly hit her. James did not just leave. He erased her. No shouting match, no drama. He simply locked the door and burned the bridge so thoroughly there was no way to cross back. By evening, she was still sitting there on the wet steps. She clutched the note, now stained with raindrops and tears. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows. She whispered his name into the damp air, but the only response was the sound of cars passing on the main road. The freedom she had dreamed of turned out to be nothing but a vast, terrifying void. When Laura's Uber disappeared around the corner that day, James stood on the porch for a long time. The cold evening air burned his lungs, but he did not move. He gripped his keyring in his fist so hard the metal bit into his skin, the last anchor holding him to this place. An hour later, the silence in the house was deafening. James walked from room to room, looking at everything as if memorizing a crime scene. The photos on the walls, her dresses in the closet, the mugs drying on the rack. It all looked like clutter now. Foreign artifacts. He pulled out his iPhone and made the call. Yeah, I need a crew, his voice was granite. Tomorrow morning. Full clean out. The morning began with a heavy thud of work boots. Men in coveralls hauled furniture, loaded boxes into a truck, and stripped the walls. James sat on the porch steps, nursing a bottle of whiskey in a coffee mug, just watching. It felt like with every piece of furniture that went out the door, a piece of his history was being amputated. By the third day, the house was a skeleton. White walls, bare floors, the echo of footsteps. The real estate agent signed the final paperwork on the kitchen island, shaking his head slightly. We repricing it for a bidding war? No, James cut him off. Price it for a cash offer. I want it gone by the end of the week. For the first 48 hours after the sale, James drank. Morning to night. Cheap bourbon in a cheap motel room off the highway. The alcohol burned his throat, but the betrayal in his gut burned hotter. He passed out on the floor, woke up in a cold sweat, and reached for the bottle again. On the third day, he caught his reflection in the greasy motel mirror, bloodshot eyes, 3 days of stubble, a hollow haunted stare. Something inside him snapped. Enough, he said to the empty room. She made her choice. Now I make mine. He gripped the half-empty bottle and hurled it into the trash can with such force that the glass shattered. He did not flinch at the sound. From that day on, James stopped drinking. He rented a condo in Bellevue, across the lake. He started a new job in a different tech sector. At first, it was brutal. The void would hit him every evening, a physical urge to call her, to hear her voice. But he held the line. He started running at 5 a.m. He worked until late at night. He hit the gym, lifting until his muscles screamed. His body ached, but his mind slowly began to clear. Day by day, brick by brick, he built a new life. A life without Laura. Meanwhile, Laura, having returned from her vacation to a cratered life, did not stop to reflect on her mistakes. Instead, she ran straight to Olivia. It was the same coffee shop. Olivia was sitting at her usual table, glass of wine in hand. Her smile was confident, self-satisfied. "So how does freedom taste?" she asked, tilting her head. Laura barely stopped herself from slapping her friend across the face. "I lost everything because of you." Laura's voice cracked into a scream. "This is all your fault." Olivia just laughed, a dry, dismissive sound. "Me? Laura, honey, that was your choice. I just opened your eyes. You walked out that door yourself." "No." Laura slammed her hand on the table, making Olivia's wine glass jump. "You poisoned my head. You pushed me into this." "Stop it," Olivia replied, her voice cool and detached. "You did what you wanted to do. Now, take some accountability and live with it." Laura spun on her heel and ran out of the cafe. Tears blurred her vision. Her heart felt like shrapnel in her chest. But Olivia's words were stuck in her brain like a splinter. Now live with it. A year passed. Laura was living in a cramped studio apartment in Lower Queen Anne. Her life was a loop of work, shallow happy hours with acquaintances, and empty evenings with a bottle of wine. She tried dating apps, went on dates with tech bros and divorcees, but she compared every single one of them to James. And every single time she realized, she had traded a diamond for glass. At night, she dreamed of his hands, his eyes. She woke up crying, whispering his name into a cold pillow in a room that never felt like home. Then one day, purely by accident, the algorithm fed her a photo. It was James. He was in a different city, somewhere on the east side, maybe Issaquah or Redmond. A new life. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she could not breathe. She started digging. It took weeks of internet sleuthing, scrolling through mutual friends of friends, but she found the address. Once she had it, a single burning desire took over. She had to see him. The house was beautiful, a modern farmhouse style with a white picket fence, nestled in the green foothills. Laura stepped out of the Uber, her heart racing. Her suitcase dragged behind her, a permanent accessory to her mistakes. She approached the gate, and at that exact moment, the front door opened. James stepped out onto the porch. He was holding an infant in his arms. Standing next to him was a woman, younger with a soft, kind face and a genuine smile. They looked like a family. A real one. James looked up and saw her standing on the sidewalk. Their eyes locked. There was no anger in his gaze. No pain. Just a calm, frigid indifference. "Laura," he said quietly. "What are you doing here?" Her lips trembled. The words died in her throat. She took a step forward, desperate to bridge the gap, but the baby started to fuss. The woman next to James immediately stepped in, soothing the child, and James turned to her, placing a protective hand on her back. In that micro moment, Laura understood. The door was welded shut. She stood by the gate, shivering, gripping the handle of her suitcase. I wanted to talk," she finally choked out. James looked her straight in the eye. "It's too late," he said. A small, humorless smile touched his lips. "You're free now. Enjoy it." His voice was steady, solid, without a drop of hesitation. Laura felt her knees give way. She turned around and began to walk away. The wheels of her suitcase rumbled over the asphalt, the sound mixing with the tears hitting the pavement. Behind her, she left a home where she no longer had a place. And that concludes our story today. Thank you for watching to the end. If you liked it, please give it a like and leave a comment. Also, we are always happy to discuss any comments you may have. See you in the next video.